Good evening, hello and welcome everybody at this Youth Dialogue on Climate Action with Executive Vice President of the European Commission, Frans Timmermans. A very warm welcome, very happy to have you here. I was going to say, some energy to pump this right up. Before I forget to mention this, because this is an important part, guys, this is actually a silent event. So I see that you all got your headsets upon entrance within the event, but if you could put them on, then you'll actually be able to hear me much better during the event. And not just me, but also yourselves later on. Because I'm very happy to have you here. I see you putting them all on. And I actually want to start off by saying thank you. And when I say thank you, I don't just mean thank you for you choosing to be here at this event, but I also mean a big thank you to you in general, because I've been going to sessions, I've been seeing and hearing you guys, and I'm just want to take a moment to also celebrate all the hard work that we're doing as young climate activists, that you're doing. I see you asking the critical questions, saying the important stuff. So can we also get a big round of applause for yourselves, guys? Thank you so much. Now, as you all know, it's been officially a week since COP27 has started, which is not just countable by the days, but also by the depth of the eye bags that some of you carry under your eyes. I won't point you out, but I see you guys. As I said, hardworking. But I think that also makes it a perfect moment in time after this first week, at the start of this second week, for us to just take some time and to reflect on all that has been shared, but also look forward on what needs to happen more. And when I say look forward, I don't just mean the second week, but also moving forward from that. I just did the thank you to you guys. I think you did amazing hard work here at COP, but I think most of the hard work that we're doing, that you're doing, is taking place in your own hometowns, in the local work that you're doing. And that is not just coincidental that I mentioned this, because in this event we will also have 3 amazing youth activists who will tell us more about the important work that they've been doing. So I'm looking at them right now. They're sitting there, and we'll hear more about your stories later on. Really excited for that. But I just want to start off by saying a warm welcome and a hi to Omnia Lomrani, the COP27 Youth Envoy. We have Anza Rado Hari Nirina. Indeed, let's give a warm welcome of applause. From Yango, and last but definitely not least, we have Kato Ewekia, a youth delegate from Tuvalu. Thank you so much, guys. Well, as I said, 3 young climate activists that have made incredibly important and significant contributions locally, nationally, and internationally. So very excited to hear more from you later on during the event. Now, for those of you who are wondering at this point, well, who is this weird girl telling me all of this? To that I say hi. Very nice to meet you. My name is Hajer Kubi. I'm a former United Nations Youth Representative for the Netherlands. I'm one of the co-founders of Network 2100. I'm a moderator, a keynote speaker. But above all, I'm a very excited moderator because I get to be here in this session for you guys. And I just don't say that because I'm also a firm believer that the best sessions are the most interactive ones, which is why it brings me a great deal of joy to see that the format that we have today is to really hear from you guys. So this is a dialogue, eh? You can ask your questions. I really invite you to. Also to our online audience, a very warm welcome. You can submit your questions to us via Slido, and then I will promise to you that I'll try my best to pose as many of those questions as possible to either the EVP or to Omnia or to Anza or to Kato or to each other, here in the sessions. But really, let's get that interactivity into this. And with that being said, I think it's only fair to turn to the person who initiated all of this and who really wanted to bring us all here together today. So I would actually like to give the floor to you, EVP Timmermans.
Well, thank you very much, and thank to all of you for being here tonight. I'm really looking forward to our dialogue. I only have a very few things to say. My first comment is, you said thank you before. I also say thank you because without you, without your generation taking to the streets, being active, there would not be a European Green Deal. The Green Deal is a result of young people attracting the attention of my generation, other generations, to the climate crisis, and we were able to then get the political momentum going in the European elections, and that resulted in the European Green Deal that we now have to put into practice. That's my job. I need to put it into practice. That's what I try and do on a day-to-day basis. But here my job is to try and be one of those who bring the world together to make sure we take the steps that are needed to avoid a complete climate catastrophe. And the one thing I would like to ask you, you can be angry. I respect that. You can be dissatisfied. I fully respect that. You can be extremely active, proactive, annoying, endlessly asking. I respect that. The one thing I would ask you not to be is to despair. Never despair, because there are too many people who are starting to despair. They see what's happening with our climate. They believe we cannot fix this anymore, and they start to despair. And despair leads to inertia. Despair leads to violence. Despair leads to losses that we don't need. This can still be fixed. It's getting more difficult by the day, but it can still be fixed. But if you guys get entrapped by despair, it will not be fixed. So help me by never ever giving in to despair. Even if you're angry, even if you're sad, even if sometimes you feel it's hopeless, it is not. And never despair. And then we will overcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we get a big round of applause for that indeed? Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think, as you said, indeed, it's about keeping that vigor in what we do. And I think, indeed, desperateness, despair, those are numbing sort of energies, and we need the energy in there. When I say getting the energy in there, I think it's only fair for me to turn to you, Omnia, because I follow you on Instagram. I see your Insta stories every day, and you are very much active on the ground here before the conference started, really trying to get that youth perspective in there. So only fair to go over to you, Omnia. I'd love to hear more of your insights on what it is that we need moving forward.
Hello everyone, I hope you can hear me. Perfect. So I'm Omnia Lamrani. I am the youth envoy for COP27 president, but I'm also a young medical doctor, and I'm doing my residency in plastic and reconstructive surgery. And what I've seen every day, patients here in Egypt suffering from asthma, heat stress because of the increasing temperature, as well as anxiety because of the changing climate. And this brings to me and has inspired me for over 6 years to be advocating not just for the health of my patients, but for the health of my community from the single biggest threat to our health of the 21st century, which is climate change. And now I have the amazing opportunity to be the first envoy. And then at COP27 in Egypt, we really value the importance of engaging youth, but to do it in a meaningful way. And this is why it's the first time we also have a children and youth pavilion, a dedicated youth-led space made independently by us, for us. And on Youth Day, we dedicated 3 hours of our day just to have roundtable discussions between the chairs of the country groups, the ministers, the negotiators, and young representatives. Youth were given the floor first to deliver their questions, to ask, and reflecting on the Global Youth Statement, which is a document that was done by 1,100 young people from 149 countries here in Sharm-el-Sheikh. And what's very inspiring is that the way that we did the first ever roundtable discussions instead of panels is that it was mentioned in the Glasgow Climate Pact in Article 64 and 65. And this really motivated me is that at COP, it's very important for us to be part of the outcome decision, to be part and to have always an inclusive space for us, to be able to go beyond the silos, have intergenerational dialogues, work together with the negotiators, because we have the solutions and we have our demands, and we are natural and equal partners to the climate agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Omnia, for sharing that. Thank you. Maybe I can go to you, EVP Timmermans, maybe for some first reflections, hearing some of the things that Omnia mentioned.
Well, I think it's very important that she indicates that already now so many people are suffering.
Yeah.
And we are at 1.1, 1.2 degree increase as compared to pre-industrial levels. Just imagine we would let this go beyond 1.5. Beyond 2 to 3. We're on a trajectory now that could take us beyond 3. Now just imagine as a medical doctor what this would mean to the health of people. Whole swathes of the planet will become completely inhabitable. People will simply not be able to live there. So this urgency to limit the temperature increase is also linked to our health and our survival. people always say we're saving the planet. No, we're not saving the planet. The planet can take perfect care of itself. The planet existed for a very, very long time without us. And if we misbehave, it will again exist without us. We will be part of another extinction if we don't start behaving correctly. And then moving to the solutions. You were talking about heat. If we can help Egypt go more quickly into renewable energy, this renewable energy, which is limitless for Egypt, solar and wind energy is almost limitless for Egypt. You can start greening the Nile Delta much more than before. This will bring temperatures down and create a new biosphere. You can, if necessary, you can desalinate at low cost. You can create a new economy based on hydrogen with huge amounts of jobs in a new circular economy. I mean, there's so many things we can do. This country could be a jewel if we move quickly into this new world. And this applies to many, many, many countries. In general, in Africa, and I'll end on that point, 600 million Africans have no access to electricity, to energy. Oh. Just imagine if you can bring solar and wind power to every single village in Africa, where the average age in Africa is sometimes below 20. What this would give in terms of opportunity to young people. And this can be done. It can be done. It is not impossible. We just need to start doing it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Omnia, thank you once again for sharing your story and the work you've been doing. Now, I said at the start, it's a dialogue. We want to hear from you guys. So I actually want to look at our audience right now, which also includes our online audience. I see some online questions coming in, so thank you for that. Keep on sending them. But is there anybody that already wants to ask a question either to Omnia or to EVP Timmermans already? I see a hand going up there. So thank you, Louise.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you. My name is Jessica. I'm here with the One campaign. Actually, in 2019, I had a chance to work on your campaign. So I'm very happy to see you sit where you are, and I see that the EU is doing a lot. In another event, we talked about the geopolitical consequences of some big happenings, such as the COVID pandemic. And what I saw was a really good EU response, but not necessarily a response that took into account the rest of the world. So there was a lot of hoarding of vaccines, and this had effects as well in a geopolitical context. You saw that a lot of African states abstained from a UN General Assembly vote to condemn the actions of Russia. I'm very lucky to have a lot of friends at COP. And one of my friends that's also here is Adenike. She's from Nigeria. And she is here to raise awareness around the situation around Lake Chad. The lake is shrinking, it's disappearing. So I want to talk to you about loss and damage. I want to be able to look my friends into the eye and say that the EU is doing enough. And right now I don't feel that that is the case. So what are your views on a loss and damage finance facility to establish that and to put money into that, not to finish that conversation by 2024, but to already commit to that and show global leadership. Thank you.
Well, this is the most topical question in this COP. Yeah. And we are very much willing to work on this, but we have to combine it with another thing. We need to make sure also, and I'll come back in concretely to your question later, but we also need to make sure that we don't step back from what we agreed in Glasgow, because, whatever you do in loss and damage, whatever you do in adaptation, if we don't reduce our emissions drastically, the G20 countries, that's 80% of global emissions. If they don't do more, then no amount of money will be enough for loss and damage and for adaptation. Having said that, it is very, very clear that many countries are so desperate for assistance because they're heavily indebted, and there's another hurricane, and they have to make more debt, and they have to get it on the financial markets, and they are investing not in the future of their country, but simply in restoring what was broken. That needs to be fixed. There has to be a different approach to that. There are other countries that need urgent infrastructure, dams or water retainment, and all these things need to happen. Some countries are on the verge, we will hear from you later, on the verge of actually disappearing if we don't act very quickly. So that needs funds. Now, what the EU wants to do this week is to see whether we can build bridges between the different positions that are still, the positions today are still wide apart. If the discussion is also only about the industrialized world has to pay a historic debt, then I think we will not get closer. If the discussion is more about we lose, especially the small island developing states, especially the least developed states, we lose so much every time we have a natural disaster, and we don't have the capacity, neither financial nor institutional, to address that. We need help. And then my answer is yes. And the international community will have to face up to that reality. That will not happen this week, that we will put a number on it, but we will start a process that will lead to a number on it, and I hope the European Union can be part of that solution this week. I, for one, will fight for it in the EU, but also with other partners, and we need to really team up with those countries that can give you the example on a day-to-day basis how they suffer to survive in an environment that is becoming very hostile to them.
Yeah. Thank you, and thank you so much for the question. We also have a question from our online audience, so I just want to go there real quick, because Sigrid is asking, how do you ensure there is representation of young people in climate policy making and here at COP? Yeah, so that could also be maybe answered in a bit by Omnia to share some perspective.
Well, I think there's so many things we need to do. Well, basically, I believe, but I've been an advocate for that for a very long time. Basically, I believe every country in the world should reduce the age of voting to 16. I think everybody 16 and older should be part of a democratic process, should have the right to vote in elections. It's long overdue that we do this in every country where we can decide this.
I see people applauding, so they definitely agree with you.
Well, I mean, if you're 16-year-old and now, you'll be my age when hopefully we reach climate neutrality. I'll be long dead probably by then. But you have to have a vote, literally a vote in the decisions we take now that will have an effect over your lifetime, way beyond my lifetime. So that's my first point. The second point is we need to, COP is moving forward. Madrid was already, was not good enough, but then Milan preparing for Glasgow was already much better. And some of you were in Milan. Were you not in Milan? Did I not you? Yes, you guys were in Milan. So that was already better. And this is already a good sign. But we're a long way of real youth participation in these negotiations. I will only be happy once you guys are actually sitting at the table.
Right.
But for that, we still have a long... And not like this, me reporting to you, you giving me your input. That helps. That really helps. But at some point, you need to be negotiating as well. But for that, you need to have a democratic mandate. It can't just come out of the air, And that needs to be dealt with at government level, because the parties participating are countries.
Yeah, absolutely. You say we can't wait until we're in institutional seats of power, or because our generation can't afford to wait that long anymore. I just wanted to go to Omnia real quick. Do you have anything you want to say to Sigrid? Maybe very short?
Yeah, it's super quick. So just yesterday we did a session where we gathered the young climate negotiators, because several countries in Europe and in Africa, they have young climate negotiators. Tunisia has 16, and I know in Europe there are many in Austria, the Netherlands, and what's very interesting is that they get the training to be able to understand the technicalities within the negotiations, and at the same time they're able to reflect the needs of youth within the discussions and at the same policy making process.
Amazing. And if I'm not mistaken, that comes from Youngo, or is it not per se from Youngo? Okay, not from Youngo, but I see Hita sitting over there. I know you're one of the people responsible. Maybe very briefly, if you want to share some perspective on what you've been doing.
Thank you so much. I 100% agree with everything that you've said, EVP Timmermans. For the first time now, we've been working with 27 different countries, some of them from the EU, and we've trying to get young people who are, as part of the negotiations, they're part of the party delegations. They've gotten 5 months of intensive training, and we have 55 youth from 27 different countries from all 5 regions of the world who are negotiating today, which is why they're not here at the meetings and we're sitting and representing them, because there are informals going on at the moment as we speak. But we would love to see how we can get more EU countries, not just have youth delegates, but also have young people in the negotiating tables on behalf of their countries.
Amazing. And yeah, thank you guys so much for doing the work. Yeah, I think that that is definitely some useful insights. Because of time, we'll get to more questions later on, much more moments to do that. But I also want to move to our second amazing young person. When I say amazing young person, I feel like I sound as though I'm 60 years old, but 22, so I can still count myself to the same generation. Anza, I'm talking about you. I would very much love to hear more from your perspective and all the amazing work that you do.
Yeah, thank you, and warm greetings to EVP and to all the audience. So I am Anza from Madagascar. I represent here the youth of Madagascar here and the civil society of Madagascar. So back to Madagascar, like most of the countries of the global south, we do not contribute as much to the global emission because, for example, for Madagascar, it's 0.12% of the global gas emission. But we are expected to sequestrate as much carbon as possible. However, Madagascar is now then experiencing a huge loss of forests. In last year, it's like 400 millions of hectares of tree coverage, which is lost. So this huge loss is explained by a high anthropic pressure, and because the conservation strategy in Madagascar and all over the world does not seek local actor empowerment, but also does not support long-term action to accompany the communities then while they are adopting sustainable practices in a very fast-changing context. So at international level, at global level, we are talking a lot about, funds availabilities, climate finance and climate adaptation funds. However, we all know here that it is very difficult for local organizations and youth-led organizations to access such kind of funding. For many times then I had to stand up and say there is no sustainability without trust, there is no localization without powerful local organizations which are expected to implement good things on the ground, right? So when the donor does not seek the gap on local actors' empowerment, there will be no trust and there will be no sustainability. We understand that the grants, the big grants to fund in climate and environment, it requires heavy financial administration procedures. It requires us compliance to policy, to code of conduct, to norm and standards. But without just assuming that we are not good enough, I mean local organization not good enough, youth-led organization good enough, why we do not invest on empowering them so that they can be able to implement it from A to Z. So this is what the call for action that I am doing now. So a bit of a success story that I can share to you is that this year my organization will be co-leading an $8 million project in the island of the Indian Ocean on conservation and sustainable livelihood promotion. And this is because they trusted on us. And here, youth-led organization, you know that this battle is not ended, and we had to proceed it. So my recommendation to young activists and youth-led organization would be, first, keep doing concrete and great things on the ground, because showing good result is the best way to advocate. This is one thing. The second thing is keep seeking growth, keep doing good quality things, and keep also seeking for compliance to norm and policy. And last thing, never give up on sharing your voice because you deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ansa. And I think only fair to say congratulations on the co-lead project. That is amazing. And I mean, I know about the work that you do, so yeah, it's definitely great to see that scale up in that sense. EVP Timmermans, would you like to give some first reflections?
Well, what I think we could perhaps do, if we get this week an agreement on, I don't know if you've heard of the Santiago network. If we get an agreement of empowering that, of making that even stronger than what was initially intended, then we could actually support much more directly these initiatives and give access to globally available knowledge centers. to be able to predict weather patterns earlier, to be able to come up with ideas, what is the best vegetation we could use, where is the best finance access we could have, which are the best partners, what are the best experiences in other countries that we could share. I mean, this is what we could provide, and especially also, you know, you say we know how to solve it, okay, but very often you then lack the technical capacity to implement it. Bring the technical capacity to implement it could also be a consequence of that. So that is what a concrete measures on loss and damage could actually do for you. And I hope we can get some real progress on this week.
Yeah. Thank you so much. If Anza, if that sort of is an answer to your recommendation, then maybe we can go to the questions, or would you like to respond? Yeah?
Maybe to add just a little bit, there is also the Global Shield initiative, which is launched.
Okay.
And we expect that this kind of component, you know, the skills transferred, the normalization of local and the youth-led organization can be considered. This should be great too. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think it's a good concrete thing you mentioned, the Santiago Agreement, to try and scale that up maybe even further. Any questions from the audience? I saw a hand over there very early on. And if we keep the questions brief, then we can, yeah. Oh, thanks. Sorry, Louise. It's like, thank you, Ivana.
Hello? Can everyone hear me? Thank you so much. I think this conversation has been so meaningful, especially as a young person. I come from the small island of Sint Maarten, which is half French and half Dutch. I'm one of the only youth representatives here, and not by my party or delegation, but through an NGO, which I found my way here. I think Sint Maarten was hit very devastatingly by Hurricane Irma, which is a Category 6 hurricane that was the most powerful in the Atlantic Ocean. Along with myself, many of my friends lost their homes, their childhood memories, and saw their islands in complete destruction. I think my question is, there are a lot of overseas territories within the EU. Sint Maarten is shared by the Netherlands and also France. We have French Polynesia, we also have Denmark, several different overseas territories. And my question is, how, before addressing other developing countries, how is the EU working to represent the interests of these small islands at international platforms like these, so that we have representation? Because the interests of these mainland countries are very different from the interests of developing countries like small islands. And just like the Pacific Islands, islands in the Caribbean are very vulnerable. And so I feel very underrepresented, and I'd really like to understand how we can address this gap. Thank you.
Well, when I was a foreign minister of the Netherlands, I went to Sint Maarten twice a year to coordinate with the local authorities how to better represent them also internationally. Very often it's by having the representatives present in delegations. But moving immediately to the present situation, both the governments of the Netherlands and France very often bring up the issue of the Caribbean on the basis of their own experience. So in that sense, I think perhaps they represent you a bit better than perhaps they communicate with you. Every time I was in the UN, I was in the G20, the Dutch minister said, we have parts of our kingdom that are in the Caribbean. We want to concentrate on that. How do we help those islands overcome these problems? But not just every time when there was a hurricane, but also structurally. And you know, there is a person I admire a lot, and she even allows me to call her my sister. And that's Mia Mottley, the Prime Minister of Barbados. And she has come up with some brilliant ideas how we could empower small island developing states, even middle-income island states, to be more resilient, to not have to get deeper and deeper into debt, because hurricane season now extends to 9 months and perhaps at some point will be 12 months. How Global Shield could help them, but also how we could have new ways of financing, new ways of looking at public debt in these circumstances. And that, I think, is, and then of course simple, how should I say this, construction measures, retaining water when it comes down in huge quantities, protecting the coastline better with infrastructural works, all of that as well. But the fundamental point is, can we create a new way of operating of the international financial community to make sure that islands are not pushed into debt and further into debt every time there is a natural disaster.
Yeah.
And I think Mia Motley has come up with some really good ideas. I want to work with her closely also to change the system of international financial organizations, the MDBs, the development banks, and so that we can change the narrative and change the practice of how we deal with these natural phenomena. Because the one thing I can't tell you, we will stop these phenomena. You know, the climate crisis as it is now will not go away. It will not go away. But we can increase the resilience of the islands. We can increase the way we react to this, and we can make sure it doesn't get worse by limiting the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. But the islands will not be left alone, and I go back to my initial point. I'm not the representative of the Netherlands here, nor of France. I represent the EU. But I hear their voices all the time when they talk about the islands in the Caribbean, and they do this as saying that they feel the responsibility and they will take the responsibility. The one thing I understand you're saying, which they don't do enough yet, and I will certainly relay the message, is have the islands at the table when they discuss this, right? Is that what you said, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And thank you so much for sharing your story as well. I see a hand over here.
Thank you very much. Hello, I'm Sean Curry from the Young European Greens. Thank you for this really nice format, by the way. I think it's very participatory, it's cool. I still have to do my job and call out the European Commission, give you a chance to respond. So if we apply the UNEP emissions gap report to the EU, then we need to 65% reductions in emissions by 2030 to keep 1.5 alive. You've mentioned what it means to kill 1.5, and you're doing good work to keep it in the text, but our own target is not keeping 1.5 alive. Even if the Fit for 55 package was increased to 57%, it's still not enough. So will you increase the emission reduction target to 65% and keep 1.5 alive?
Good question.
The reality is, if I want to do that, I need to get the law that we have to increase from at least 55% to, you're asking for 65%. There is no way I can get the member states to sign up to that today. So my approach is a different approach. We have the climate law, that's binding on our member states. Through the adoption of the legislation that follows from that, Fit for 55 you call it, we have adopted already 3 pieces of legislation. On that basis, I can say with some confidence that we will be going beyond the 55. We will have to calculate exactly how much, but I say it with confidence, we will be going on this basis already beyond the 55. We still have other pieces of legislation coming on that might help us go even further. Now, the one thing that the European Parliament got, one of the things they got out of the negotiations on the climate law is a revision clause. And especially also the Greens in the European Parliament pushed for that. So that would give me an opportunity to go back to the member states at some point in the next couple of years and say, look, we agreed on the basis of best knowledge we had, and if the rest of the world would also move, that 55 would be enough to reach where we are. If we have to conclude in a couple of years' time this is not the case, then we have a case to review the law and we might go to a higher percentage. Having said all that, I see the rest of the world moving quicker than I had anticipated before. Even some of the major emitters, sorry, that until recently were very reluctant, are in practice doing more than expected. If you see the speed with which the Chinese are now introducing renewables, it's really amazing. India is moving in the same direction. If we are all doing what we need to do, all the major emitters, then we could still get there. But your point is a fair point. Today we have this gap. This gap should be well considered, but my political reality is also true, that I could not convince the member states today to go beyond, which they already find very, very difficult to do. But step by step we will get beyond the at least 55. We could then perhaps say at least 57, step by step. I know it is not what you want to hear because you want us to be more ambitious. But the problem for me is I need to look behind and make sure that everybody's still following. And that is with your help, I can perhaps make them more ambitious. If you can galvanize young people in all the member states to ask for more, I'm sure we will get more. But this is something I cannot do alone. I will need your help. I'm not putting this on your shoulders. It's my responsibility, and I accept this responsibility. But I have to be honest to you, this is as far as I can go today.
Okay, and thank you for the question. There's another question from the chat, and maybe I can combine it with it, because if I do hear you, Mr. Timmermans, then do you, because you say there's no way we can get that into law into the 60%, and you say perhaps if people are, because we see things moving fast, perhaps we will also move there fast enough. You mentioned the revision point, but wouldn't that be too late? Because we know how small the window is that we're dealing with. We know what it means to give up 1.5. Somebody's also asking, and that's where I also want to go. Somebody's asking, so what is the best outcome we can hope for from COP27? And if I hear you say that, I'm actually curious to hear from you what you, what are you expecting, maybe even?
Well, the first part of your question is, aren't we too late? Well, we are late.
Yes.
We are late. And nobody should hide that fact. We are late. But also on the basis of the IPCC report, we're not too late. We can still get there. But it is going to lead to a tremendous effort. Now, the one thing that might help, we talk about this at least 55. But what does that mean? That means a rapid transition to renewables. Now, we're speeding that up. I mean, we're going to be at 45% renewables in 2030. That's 8 years from now. That is an incredible speed. For that, we need to do so much building, so much permitting, so much has to be done. We're asking people to reduce their energy consumption. That means that we need to look at how they live, how they move, how they work, and everything needs to change. And already now, many citizens are insecure because so much is changing, and they don't know whether they can be part of that pace of change. But if we can prove in the next couple of years that this transition is just, that we're leaving no one behind, and that their energy bills are going down because their houses are far more energy efficient with solar panels and heat pumps, then you will see an acceleration of this transformation. People will come more and more on board, and I also need your help with that. And then perhaps it will become easier to go higher with the percentage we want to reach.
Okay.
But on your second point is on COP.
Yeah.
Look, this is what they call in jargon an implementation COP. So this would never be a revolutionary COP. But we have to avoid that what is happening internationally, the crisis that's on, the risk of energy crisis, food crisis, doesn't get us into a situation that we step back from what we agreed last year. I think this is very important to achieve this week. And the second thing is, given everything we've seen, I can mention Pakistan, I can mention the droughts, I can mention the wildfires.
Yep.
We need to step up financing for adaptation and for loss and damage. These should be the two main deliverables of this week.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for answering that. And maybe that's also a good transition into our third and final showcase. Kato, I would very much like to give the floor to you to hear more from you and on your insights on what you've been doing.
Thank you for having me here. I'm honored to share my story. My name is Bernard. People know me as Kato. I'm 26 years old. Sorry. And I'm from Tuvalu. If you don't know where Tuvalu is located in the middle of the South Pacific. It is the fourth smallest country in the world. It's a low-lying atoll, consists of 11,000 people, population in Tuvalu. Some of you might know Tuvalu as the sinking island. So the biggest threat that we face in Tuvalu is climate change. I would like to share you my stories that I experience every day and with the happenings of the climate crisis in Tuvalu. During the droughts, families, they take 6 buckets each to go to where the big water tank, and they collect waters from there. And in each household, there could be more than 10, and they only share 6 buckets. to Tuvalu, we depend on rain 100%. And whenever I go and fetch buckets for my family during the droughts, like right now, we're facing droughts right now. I was come across children and women as well carrying buckets. You know, I feel for them. And during storms, I remember in 2017, it was Cyclone Tino. Cyclone Tino, we were at home, and the wind was so strong, and our roof was about to rip up of our house. And I was with my younger siblings, and I was telling them like don't be scared because I'm here. I'm the eldest of my siblings. And then I was thinking, what future can I give to my siblings? The reason why I came to COP26 is to save my people and my future. During King's Tide, our island is like a sinking boat. It has holes. Water comes underneath our island. And I'm also thinking like, I don't know when will my island will disappear.
Yeah.
I don't know what we will do if our island completely sink. And we don't want to relocate to another place because if I'm in another place, I feel like a foreigner. And I believe as well, all of us in this room, when we are in somewhere else, we don't feel like home because we all have a home. I came here. This is my second COP. When I went to COP26 in Glasgow, many interviewers asked me this question: if your island sink, what would you do and where would you go? I refuse to answer it because I don't like the word that we are called the sinking island. I hope that one day we'll be called the rising nation.
Wow. Wow.
So this year, I came with other 4 youths to represent our country, to share our story. And also, we didn't come here to share my story for you to feel pity on us. We are a country. All of us, we have a country. We came here so that we can tell our story so that we can work together and save this planet. I remember during the pandemic, the vaccine was found less than 2 years because the world worked together. And this is what is missing: unity. Unity in all nations.
Yeah.
So I'm very privileged to be. This opportunity is a very golden opportunity to me to share you my story. And before I close off, I would like to quote what my PM always say: if we save Tuvalu, we save the world. Faftailasi Tuvalu Modiatua. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kato. And not just for sharing your story, but also the courage in your vulnerability, for sharing that with us here. And I think I can only speak for everyone here that, you very much touched us with your story. And thank you once again. I think your story is at the heart of what this entire gathering, not just this one, but all of us being here in Egypt these 2 weeks, what it's all about. So thank you for that so much. EVP Timmermans, if I may ask you to respond to what is a very personal story, but I'm sure, it would have touched you as well.
Well, there's there are no words that I can find to describe what I feel right now. I'm just trying to imagine myself being in a situation, and I come from a country that is partly on the sea level, but well protected for now. Just trying to imagine a situation where, as a people, you would have to think in terms of exile because your country would disappear. I just can't wrap my head around that. So, trying to stand even for 10 seconds in your shoes is, for most of us here, simply impossible. But at the same time, the power with which you tell your story is something that I think I speak on behalf of everyone here. Nobody will ever forget. I will certainly not forget your testimony. So whenever I run into difficulties, or whenever we need to do more, I will think about what you said, and I will think about that there is a nation that wants to rise but that might sink, and we have a global duty to do everything we can to help it rise instead of sink.
Thank you. And indeed, as you said, to help it rise instead of sink. I want to go to our audience as well. I'm sure you all have responses to what Kato has shared with us. I see a hand here. We'll go there in a second, but let's start there, and then let's go to you in a bit then.
Yes, thank you, Kato. I would just want to say we stand in solidarity with the people from Tuvalu, and I'm also wearing the flower from the Pacific to show my support. To continue, EVP Timmermans. We have spoken in the past about the ICJO campaign by Vanuatu being brought up at the International Court of Justice to actually discuss this exact problem that Brother Kato is bringing up. Because 1.5 is enough for the people to survive, not to thrive. And what we're asking for them is to thrive as well. And that's why we've called upon all member states at the UN to vote in favor on this UN resolution that's being brought up this December at the UNGA. And actually this Friday it will be brought up at this COP. The resolution will be publicized, and we have asked your office at the European Commission to also look into this. Diederik Samson, your vice head, has already said and indicated that they support this, that you support this. But what we want is to have the support of Western member states of the UN to show their support for ICJAO resolutions on climate change and human rights. Because the impact of the climate crisis is not only one that's affecting biodiversity, obviously it is. It's also affecting their human rights, our lives collectively. So my question to you is, could you show climate leadership also abroad at the UN, for example, and give a statement in support of the ICJAO campaign and tell the world that this campaign has been brought up by peers like Kato is one thing that you would support together with your office? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your question.
Well, if Diederik Samson said that we support it, then you can count on my support.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. Sounds great. Thank you. You had your hand up for quite some time, so go ahead, please.
Hello. Yeah, it's very hard to me to follow up on these emotional statements from before, but I think what is in the center of it is, I mean, that we need progress in all parts of discussions here on the COP. I want to come back to mitigation. I think the financial sector, the financial system, is very, very important to reach 1.5. And the Article 2.1c in the Paris Agreement, which is a very prominent article there, did not achieve to be put on the agenda in the first days of on the first day of the COP. And I'm really wondering why the EU didn't achieve that. It's really, well, it's a big problem. And so I would like to ask you, what can you undertake to make sure that at least Article 2.1c gets on the last, on the cover decision of the COP?
Yeah, thank you. EVP Timmermans?
Well, the answer to that is very simple. We'll keep insisting on it and see how far we can go. But I have to, in more general terms, I have to tell you that at the United Nations General Assembly, I spend a lot of time talking also to the financial sector, and they understand that if they don't start shifting their investments in a different direction, that they will create huge amounts of stranded assets that will lose people all their pension funds because they have the control over trillions of euros or dollars, however you want to see it. And what they ask of us is to give them the clarity of direction and the clarity of regulation they need also on an international level. We have not given that enough yet. So what we need to do is to make sure the regulations we make in the EU and internationally facilitate the investment in the transformation of our societies and our economies. What they want is regulations to be predictable, to be reliable, and we should deliver that. We are not there yet. And this, I think, is one of the main tasks we have in public policy, to make sure that because what we need for this transition runs in the trillions, in the many trillions, and there is no way there's ever going to be enough public money to make that happen. So the only opportunity we have is to unleash, because the investors are saying, yes, we're sitting on our money because we are insecure, we don't know where it's going. So our task is to give them enough security that they will start investing in these numbers. And that, again, sorry for coming back to Africa, but if we could unleash a wave of investment in renewables in Africa, that would already change really the paradigm. If we could bring renewables to all small island states that now have to buy fossil fuel that has to be brought at incredible prices, if they could be masters of their own energy generation, that would change everything in a lot of parts of the world. So the investment issue is one of the most important issues, and that is something I heard a lot in the ministerial meeting today. So on that, we can reach consensus.
Okay.
So I hope this will bring us also, this could be brought forward this week, and I'm more than happy to come back to you on this later this week and see if we make any progress.
I like the sound of that. That sounds good. And thank you for your question and for keeping your hand up for quite some time. Because there are many hands up, and I want to see them again, because I want to go to another question. And I think you've been holding your hand up for quite a bit. Yeah, please do go ahead.
Thank you so much. My name is Valeria. I'm from Peru, and I would like to ask the following question. When will the EU will have their own EU-wide Youth Climate Council? Because I know that there are a few countries that have it, such as Denmark, Poland, and Netherlands. And actually in Peru, we have our own youth representatives. And now, thanks to the Climate Youth Negotiation Program, we have 3 youth negotiations. So I think that that's something that you can learn from Global South, and EU can actually expand it all over the world.
Okay, good question. I see somebody clapping.
What we have done is to create a platform where you can become a climate ambassador, and many people across the European Union, especially young people, have done that, have chosen to be climate ambassador. And we came up with this idea during the pandemic, so it had to be online. But in fact, it works quite well online, because it means that people can meet virtually and don't need to travel a lot to see each other. But now we need to take this also to the next level. We need to take it to the next level where these ambassadors come together, perhaps are able to find common positions, and then with these common positions influence political decision making. I hope we can take it to that next level in the next couple of years.
Okay, thank you so much. Also, thank you for the question. There's a question in the audience from somebody, and some other people are agreeing on that they want to know the answer to this question. It's to you, EVP Timmermans. And somebody asks, if you were 20 years old again now, what would you be doing? Sitting here at this session to ask the then Timmermans some questions on climate action.
Well, if you take me back to when I was 20, I was in a completely different place. I would probably be riding my motorbike more than anything else.
Okay.
But that's, if I try and imagine, what I can do, we have 4 kids, and our youngest kids are 16 and 18. So if I look at what they are doing, they are angry about many things that are not going well enough, and they're pushing me to do more and to go faster. But they're also very conscious about their own behavior, and they're trying to, they know my kids are not zealots, but they're also contributing in making very conscious choices about the clothes they buy or don't buy, about what they eat, about how they want to travel and the choices they make. And I think this is a conversation that's going on in that generation, and I hope that I would be like them, that I would also then be part of such a conversation, because the fact is that what my kids are doing, the choices they are changing, they're also educating my wife and myself in the choices we make. It makes us more conscious about the choices we make. And I really am grateful for them. And I hope that if I were 20 today, I would be doing the same thing with my parents.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. And also thank you to the person who asked the question. But that's, it's always interesting to hear that perspective, sort of looking back also with the knowledge of this time. I saw a hand up there at the top on the left. So please do go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I think we already talked a little bit about it, but I just wanted to ask this question because, I think it makes a little bit something clear. Yeah, the International Energy Agency says that for the global energy market to reach net zero by 2050, we need new coal, oil and gas projects. So a total ban on investing fossil fuels companies at the latest by 2025. Will the European Commission adapt the Repower EU to keep fossil fuels out?
Okay.
Look, I have to be very, very explicit about this subject. Repower EU helps us go much faster in the direction of renewables than any plan we had before. But at the same time, whatever we do in investing in renewables, it will not solve our problem this year, next year, and the year after. We are missing a huge amount of energy that used to come from Russia because we don't want the Russian energy anymore because of their despicable war against Ukraine, which means we have to look for alternatives. Now, one of the alternatives is reducing energy consumption, and many European citizens are contributing to that because they want to do that, or also because they can't pay their energy bills and they're trying to reduce where they can, and we need to help them with that. So energy consumption reduction is an essential element of that. The second is speeding up, as I said, renewables, which is mainly solar, wind, but also some other measures such as biomethane. And the third will be in the intermediate to look for alternatives. And some of these alternatives will be fossil fuels coming from other places than Russia. Now, you can argue you shouldn't be doing this, but the fact of the matter is that if we would not be doing this, people would literally be in the cold, because you cannot just switch overnight into another energy system. And secondly, whole industries would stop functioning and people would also then be unemployed. And if we get into that situation, then our support for Ukraine would quickly evaporate because there would be so much turmoil in European societies. And I promise you one thing, the extreme right would prey on it and would grow and would take us down a terrible path. So, as much as I don't like to buy fossil fuels, but to get out of this situation, and this winter it looks as though we'll be okay. Next winter might be extremely complicated. The winter after that will also still be complicated. For these 3 winters, we have no choice but to also make sure we have enough fossil fuels. And I want to give you this story straight, because you need to understand this straight. You might disagree with it, but this is the situation. Because for me, our way of life would be threatened at an existential level if we let Putin win this war. It is that important to me, because these people go after your liberties. They will start discriminating against the LGBTI community in a horrible way. They're already doing that. They will start to control the press. They want autocracy to win, and I want our liberties to survive. And for that, sadly, I will also need fossil fuels in the next couple of years. It is a reality I have to face, and I have no alternative, and I defend it because it's for a greater good. But after that, we will move very, very quickly away from fossil fuels, and that will make us stronger. That will make us sovereign in our energy choices, and that will allow us to go in the right direction.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's as you say. I think yeah, I said this to you, Kato. Thank you for the vulnerability in sharing your story. I also want to say that to you, to EVP Timmermans. Is, as you say, perhaps we don't all agree on that. Perhaps there are some different opinions. But I do want to say thank you for giving that to us straight, and thank you for coming here and also being willing to lay open the dilemmas with us. I think that's important, and I think sometimes that doesn't happen, and I think sometimes that prevents gatherings and dialogues like these taking place, because people assume that they need to have all the answers and that they need to be able to have a quick fix to things. So I also want to thank you for being open in that regard. We're very short on time, so I'm actually looking for a final question to go to, if you can keep it short. I have two people looking at me that have been keeping their hands up for quite long, but I think you've been holding it up for a little longer. So if you can keep it short, then we can get to the wrap up. Yes, with the white shirt.
Thank you very much. So my name is Santiago. I'm 18 years old. I come from Mexico, and Mexico sadly is a country where indigenous communities get their rights violated the most. And after hearing Kato's story, I realized that these are not just stories, but this is a reality that we Global South communities are facing. So my question is a very brief question, and it's a yes or no question. Do you believe that it is important for European Union state members to show their solidarity to Global South communities through concrete implementation procedures, the redistribution of historical powers, and the application of loss and damage?
Oh, the mic.
The answer to that is yes, but then we have to become concrete. What does it mean? And that will take some time to elaborate. But the answer to that is yes. And you mentioned indigenous people. I'm perhaps I'm being very political now, but I am so happy that the Brazilian people in majority decided to vote for somebody who will bring the agenda of indigenous people back in Brazil, who will help us to look at the Amazonas, not just in terms of this being one of the world's most important carbon sinks, but also in terms of how can we help communities there survive in a way that is in line with their own culture and with their own expectations. And I think this is something that applies to Mexico, it applies to Colombia, it applies to Venezuela, it applies to all the other countries in the Amazon region, also including Brazil, but it also applies to indigenous people, even if they are not called like that, in other parts of the world, such as Africa and some parts of Asia. So I think that agenda should be part of the loss and damage discussion.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much also for your question. Because we are already nearing the end of the event, but I just want to turn to you once more, EVP Timmermans, because stories have been shared. We've heard from all of you. We've heard your questions, also the work that you've been doing, whether it's with youth negotiators, bringing an advisory opinion to the International Court of Justice for young people in all over the world, and specifically also the stories of you guys, of Kato, of Anza, of Omnia. Hearing all of that, and you started this event off by saying, whatever you do, do not despair. We have a week to go, but also after that week, we have much more work left to do. So I just want to hear your reflection on all that has been shared, and maybe some words of encouragement to move forward here all together.
Well, of course, you guys are a source of inspiration, and you're doing incredible work. But I also have an ask of you. And those who know me a bit better know that I do this at every time when I speak to young people. I try and do it a lot. We live in a society where it has become too interesting to cuddle together in a bubble. We have become averse of being confronted with people with whom we disagree. We are losing the noble art of disagreeing well. And a democracy cannot survive if it does not cultivate the noble art of disagreeing well. And there are so many young people like you, but there are also many young people who are not like you, who believe replacement theories, to name one of the most toxic theories that are going around in society, who don't see any future for themselves. And they define future not in terms of climate, they define it in terms of jobs, of a house, of a partner, of an opportunity, of being able to provide for themselves. My plea is, don't leave them, don't ignore them, even if what they say is confrontational, and sometimes even you might find reprehensible. Never refuse to stay in dialogue with them. You might discover, as I discover regularly, you might discover that deep down they are just worried and concerned, and they shield it in a lot of anger and a lot of scapegoating of others, etc.
Yeah.
We cannot afford to lose part of our population because we are uncomfortable with what their values seem to be or what their points are. So please, please, never refuse a dialogue. Cultivate the art of disagreeing well, because that's the only way a democracy can sustainably survive. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for sharing that. And thank you once again also for your vulnerability and being open with us and coming here and initiating this in the first place, right? Being the one to come up with this gathering. Now, you hadn't asked for us. I always like to do this at the end of sessions. I think especially this one is one I remember well. But maybe we can take a picture with the audience in the background. If you guys want to be on the picture, do squeeze in a little bit. If you don't, that's all okay. We're just as much friends then. But maybe we can do a quick selfie all together, guys, just also to have something to remember this session with. EVP, if I may give the phone to you, actually, then we can do...
I'll tell you how this works.
Oh, you can... You'll teach it to me.